This presentation will provide a brief outline for the emergency response virtual report. For the current project, our team worked collaboratively. Our team members include Kuang, Ziming, and Chen. First of all, let's see the outline of this task. The current task includes an introduction of ARHAM, emergency, issue, effects, response, ideal model of emergency response, problem during emergency response, and interesting cultural facts. I'll introduce the former section of this task, and Huang and Ziming will introduce the later part of this task. Let's start with ARHAM's brief introduction. ARHAM land is a historical region of the Northern Territory, Australia, and covers approximately 97,000 square. There are 12,000 to 60,000 endangered population live in ARHAM. The majority of Aboriginal people in ARHAM have Yugur cultural heritage. The central city, which is located nearest to ARHAM land, is John. There is a distance of 500 kilometers between these two places. So, what's the emergency issue in ARHAM land and what's the causes of the issue? Look at the picture. You will see the people in ARHAM are seeking support unhealthy. Thus, the healthy issue will focus on malnutrition for the current task. And this issue origins from 1948. The main causes related to low socio-economic status and poor living standard in ARHAM, such as Aboriginal diet lifestyle, lack of nutrition, education, depression, eating disorder, career use, high body demand. Then, we turn to effects of this emergency issue. Firstly, malnutrition threats humans' body functions and health index. Like malnutrition can cause hepatic, low body weight index, metabolic immunity, and so on. On the other hand, as the region of ARHAM lands was constantly suffered by malnutrition, the region experienced lack of healthy labor. What's more, as people's work and living standard are restricted by their unhealthy conditions, I spend lots of money to heal side effects diseases for malnutrition, and therefore, ARHAM bears a cycle of poverty. For overcoming this challenging situation in ARHAM land, the supportive sectors embrace the Australian government, Northern Territory Department, learners and communities from society and local hospitals. The strategies may include governmental policies, funds, and nutrition education. As Tuna and Avery outlined, the government and local communities' ideal model for supporting ARHAM's malnutrition including stages of offering healthy education, patient education, promoting community awareness, and finally, reduce malnutrition percentage.
Well, here are some problems during emergency response. First is the recognition or the resources. The volunteers in ARHAM land said that they all hope to share health knowledge, but the fact is that some areas do not have internet, TV, or newspapers. In addition, language is also a barrier when communicating health knowledge, because health education is usually given by busy staff in English, which may be the wrong language for the patient. It's often delivered without the basic principles of two-way learning, empathy and respect. They have their own ways of understanding illness and health. It emphasizes the level and coverage of medical service and the importance of cultivating indigenous medical terms. Furthermore, A series of cultural factors such as loss of land and long-term racial discrimination are the underlying reasons for the poor health of the indigenous people. The history, culture, economy, art, and the religion of the indigenous people are closely related to the land. Once they lose the land, their social structure will also collapse. The lack of the cultural foundation has led to the loss of control of the indigenous people's lives and even psychological depression and anxiety. The Australian government also found that many Aboriginal people are unwilling to go to the nearest hospital for treatment after they're sick. This is because long-term discrimination has caused them psychological fear, coupled with language barriers and very difficult cultural life and customs. Even if they are with adequate medical service provided, many indigenous people prefer to stay at home and endure the torture of illness. Okay, now I'm going to share some interesting phenomena in this field. Some cultural facts. It's a forbidden to buy alcohol in this community. According to the novels of Australian Indigenous writer Jack Davies, the plot of Australian Indigenous alcoholism is mentioned many times. This is the proportion of Australian Aborigines who frequent both alcohol in all age groups in 2008. From the data, it's not difficult to see the prevalence of alcoholism among Australian Aborigines. Before the arrival of the British, the indigenous Australians had very limited knowledge of alcohol, and the raw materials used to extract alcohol from the indigenous people in different places were also different. For the Arnhem Land studied by our group, the local Aboriginals extract alcohol from pandanus, while the Aboriginals in Sydney prefer cork, coconut in Queensland, and sandalwood in Victoria. The alcohol extracted from the trees has a low concentration and a limited amount, but it also allows some indigenous people to taste the sweetness of alcohol. Therefore, when the British brought in large quantities of wine that was time-consuming, effortless, and cheap, so the indigenous people couldn't refuse it. And the second reason is even more interesting. According to Core, they thought alcohol makes them more powerful. Therefore, prohibition is not only to prevent the Aborigines from destroying um, many aspects of their health and life, and even the lives of future generations because of alcohol. It's also out of consideration for national stability.
The second interesting cultural fact is the genetic and the social cultural differentiation in the Aborigines of Arnhem Australia. 4 trips of Arnhem were surveyed for thematic feast based on pattern intensity indices, total range count, and a distance statistic, and through the blood and the audio frequency characteristic of PITS testing. Calculates the distance between the 4 trips. Statistics showed that trips can be divided into TV Gringo in western and Mergin Audiriawa in eastern, conferring the extreme alkaline relative isolation to the trip. Last interesting cultural fact is the food and the nutrition policy issue in remote Aboriginal communities in Arnhem. The indigenous peoples of Arnhem are experiencing chronic disease due to their unhealthy diet structure and poor living habits. The long-term lack of proper diet and lifestyle guidance makes it difficult for the indigenous people to escape the healthy recipes. the Airline Progress Association is slowly changing their phenomenon through policies and consumer habits.